Rankings. Overrated? Underrated? What a packed show we have for them today, Caleb. And I hope you brought your scuba gear because we're diving deep into two teams today. Help me out, Caleb.
Will I ever help you out? I'll be right there. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Welcome, one and all, to your new life in a fantasy football world. It is episode 9, and are we ever excited to finally start diving into our rankings? A wonderful show today. We're going to dive into teams. We're going to dive into running backs. We're going to dive into overrated and underrated players. It's probably going to go on way longer than we expect. I don't know. What do you say, my curvy love doll partner, Wes?
That's me. Curvy as can be. I agree. We will probably get off topic many times. And as promised, we are going to give you a full 5-second review of the Avengers Endgame. Batman saves the day. Also,
Jack.
But until then, let's get into a little news, Caleb, and this is going to take up quite a lot of time. Hit us with the topics.
All right. There is no news.
Okay.
The only thing of importance, we was sorry to hear Isaiah Crowell towards his was it his ACL? I thought it was his Achilles. Sorry, the show
my ACL.
The show notes
What?
mix me up sometimes. Bad for him. Sorry to hear that for the person and the player that he is. But is there any positive spin on this, Wes?
Not really, because I don't think it has a major effect on Josh Jacobs because they signed Doug Martin immediately. So I put Doug Martin on the same plateau as Crowell. It doesn't affect anything anyway, except the only effect is it took about 60 seconds of our podcast.
All right. That might be the quickest news segment we've ever had. The news brought to you by Metamucil. Let it soften things up for you.
Is that a stool softener?
Oh, it might be.
Did you take some before the show?
Well,
I'll let you know.
If you hear this going on, in my voice today, you know what's happening.
A quiver?
Downstairs. Let's just say I have tied 2 of my children's diapers together, and I am currently wearing them. All right.
Like a sumo wrestler.
You know what I want to get into now? Underrated.
Underrated, overrated, all of them now.
They are the most important and most unimportant players that you're going to listen to today, because we're hoping for some confrontation. We're hoping to say some names that you really disagree with, and there's some juicy ones. And the most overrated, you're really gonna love that, but you're gonna have to wait, because right now, we're gonna talk
patience.
We're gonna talk about 4 players that we consider very underrated going into the season, and I realize
I'm really looking forward to our first argument on here when we disagree on something.
I always
hope it's
curse
heated.
you out.
I hope it's
after
violent,
the podcast.
and I hope it's heated and violent and layered with expletives.
I mean, we're gonna have to bleep them out, but I fully expect we're gonna have a fully explicit episode. But we're not gonna tell the listeners which one it is. It's just they're gonna be la 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 listening to it like it's a normal podcast, and then boom, they get hit with 1,000 F-bombs. That's all it is. Anyway, off topic.
Until
as we
then,
said,
we'll keep it PG-13. You knob.
That off topic talk, it took longer than the news today. That was great. Rest, you want to hit us with your first underrated player going into 2019?
Surely. This is a player that I was very uninspired by last year. His name is Ronald Jones the Third. Rojo. Peyton Barber took over duties last year. Ronald Jones was a complete disappointment. on every layer possible. He was a second-round pick. They spent a high second-round pick on him, and he didn't do anything. He didn't even rush for 100 yards last year total. But Bruce Arians has taken over that offense, and he has come out and said that the coaching staff as a whole is most impressed with Jones out of the entire team. And I know it's just the beginning. It's volunteer workouts and stuff like that, but it's a very good sign for him when this time last year, they're just talking about how much he was struggling. Peyton Barber did not set the world on fire. I mean, he did have a good game here or there, but he is not hard to replace. I don't think they would hesitate if Ronald Jones started showing up a little more and get more comfortable with that offense. And Arians came out and said how he wants to get that running game back on track after a terrible year last year. And this is the juicy part, Caleb. Prepare to lick your chops.
Currently licking.
This potential...
Don't laugh at me. This is our first argument. No.
Keep licking.
Okay.
So he's the running back 39. Potential number one running back if he can beat out Peyton Barber, which I assume he will. Running back 39. He's being taken around where Duke Johnson, who doesn't even want to be on the Browns right now, and Austin Eckler are being taken. I think he has a lot of potential, and I think it would be possible to be maybe a fourth running back on your team, but at running back 39, I think that's a pretty good deal. A good steal. Okay, cease the licking.
Cease it. Oh, man. Last year, he really pooped the bed for a lot of fantasy people. I think he was high for quite a few people, and he was going, in middle rounds, and he just, he went nowhere. That was a tough one. So I really hope the best for the guy because I think he was pretty talented coming out of college.
Yeah, come on, Ronald.
Yeah.
The 38th overall pick.
Ronald Jones.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let me hit you with the specifics. Last year total, he had 23 carries for 44 yards. He couldn't even manage 2 yards an attempt. Pathetic. But here's the teaser. That's why you can get him at a bargain price.
Yeah.
Underrated.
Well, that's the kind of player you want, though. One that you can pay basically nothing for and, have a lot of upside, too. So
that's right.
Good pick. I'm quarterback heavy today for some stupid reason, but first one, I'm a late round quarterback grabber guy. So a lot of these guys are late round players. Should they be? For my benefit, yes. So I want to talk about Derek Carr as being underrated. Maybe his stock has gone up a little bit because of the additions they've made to the team. But I'll just talk about his stats a little bit and let you decide on whether or not he could have a big year. Going back to the year where he obviously had his best season in 2016, he had Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree. He had some good players, good running backs, ready to go. Latavius Murray was with them at that point. He threw for 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions. Great game at that point. He had a great average, 63.8 completion percentage. Then the next year came around following his injury, and it went down. 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, only 3,500 yards passing. So not a great season, especially since a lot of people drafted him early, seeing as what he did before. Last year, without having almost any weapons to throw to, he threw his highest yardage total at 4,049 yards, 68.9% completion percentage, only 19 touchdowns, interceptions were 10. His interceptions went down a little bit, but it's still high compared to his touchdown ratio. But now, my friend, he has some weapons. Even if you hate what Antonio Brown is and what he did and what he does, Antonio Brown is a phenomenal wide receiver. And he does nothing more than help that team and help Derek Carr, who has a fairly high accuracy percentage, throwing to a guy who can catch just about anything. Then you add Tyrell Williams from the Chargers, who is a tall, lanky, deep threat player. You have J.J. Nelson, who's this little guy, but ultra fast. Even take Ryan Grant, who is not a phenomenal player, but a great ancillary piece.
Ancillary.
Is this when we drink? It's another word that I said. Even, Luke Wilson, Darren Waller, nothing crazy when it comes to tight ends, but they are set up to be a passing team, right? That's what they want to be, clearly. Now, they did draft a running back in the first round who is, by the way, a pass-catching back, and Josh Jacobs. You know who the second running back really is on this team currently? Jalen Richard, who's also a pass-catching back. So they are set up to be a passing team. They have outlets for him. They have big-name receivers, and he's the kind of player, again, that you can get in very late rounds, beyond the 10th, 11th, 12th round. And whether you stream him or not, he is, in my mind, he's going to be a very valuable player going into the season. The only other ranking I wanted to look at, the overall, because we have strength of schedule rankings currently set up. And for quarterbacks, the Oakland Raiders, that's their only downfall. Is right now they're ranked 29th in strength of schedule for quarterbacks, but it's still going to be a heavy passing team. So I really like Derek Carr going into this year. I think he's going to surprise people and have RB1 upside, where top 12 quarterback easy.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I like Derek Carr. I don't want him to have a good year because I don't want that stinking nut job Antonio Brown to succeed, but you're right. He was a huge disservice, man, about the weapons he had the last few years. He hasn't had anybody. Jared Cook, an aging tight end, was his only guy that was worth throwing the ball to. Now, how many weapons does he have, man? Like, you named them all off, and Martavius Bryant's trying to get reinstated. I mean, this is going to be the best set of weapons he's had in a long time, if ever. And he has a young running back that can catch out of the backfield. But I'm not trying to... You made this whole argument. I'm just saying, like, I didn't realize how underrated he was because he's the 25th rated quarterback. I mean, Andy Dalton and Matt Stafford are around him. Are you kidding me?
You don't even have to draft him. Nobody's picking him up. Nobody's talking about him. It's
no one's...
And they clearly have his back because they did not draft a quarterback. They're not looking at getting a quarterback. At least it doesn't seem that way. So they're all about him.
All about that dude.
All about him. So am I. And you know what else I'm all about? Your next player.
Oh. Okay. Well, it's a Jet. And when he's a Jet, he's always a Jet. Robbie Anderson.
Ooh.
I have a little brief argument about this guy since he helped me win the championship in one of my leagues last year. He is currently the 31st wide receiver, being taken in around the 8th round. This guy had a terrible start to last year. If you take out his week 5, where he had 3 catches for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, he had a very pedestrian year. He had 293 yards and 1 touchdown. That's it until week 14. And he is not being rostered by anyone at this point. Well, what's happening around week 14? Jets are out of the playoff race. Sam Darnold's getting more comfortable, maybe slinging a little more freely, starting to get a little more chemistry with Robbie Anderson. In his last 4 weeks, he went for 23 catches, 336 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I like where this guy's going. I mean, he's not a stranger to... he's not coming out of nowhere. He had a big year last year in 2017. He had 940 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. I think him and Sam Darnold are getting on the same page. He's going to be his number 1 option. Le'Veon Bell coming to the team is just going to keep the defense more honest, staying closer to the line, giving this guy more single coverage. I think he's not a number 1 receiver. He's an okay number 2 receiver, but I think people are taking him as a number 3. And I think he's an outstanding number 3, low-end number 2. So where he's going, around the 8th round. I think he's very underrated going into the season. I don't think people are talking about him much because the majority of his season was pathetic. But near the end, he caught fire, and I think it was a little peek into season 2019 of what's to come for the Jets offense.
I like Robbie Anderson, especially if Sam Darnold can take that next step. He had seemed to have a problem a little bit there getting the ball to him, but we'll see.
Not in the last 4 weeks.
Not for the last 4 weeks.
Are you arguing with me?
No. I would never do that. No. The higher my voice gets, the more I'm definitely not arguing with you. No, I would never argue with you.
Very nice.
I do like Robbie Anderson. He burned me a little last year because I played him several weeks, and all those weeks he just bombed, but whatever.
Oh, that's why you're a little stingy with your comeback.
Shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
You're still heartbroken over him.
Listen, we're just going to move on so you can get over it.
Hey, do me a favor. Build a bridge and get onto your next player.
Oh. Josh Allen. I'm on quarterbacks, man. I want to talk about Josh Allen. Okay?
For someone who drafts one quarterback, you were sure aroused for him this year.
Well, listen. I'm aroused at the opportunity of streaming quarterbacks. There's just so many good options out there. So Josh Allen suffers from a very, very poor accuracy. If he was in the NFL 50 years ago, he'd be a stud. But his accuracy is something that needs to be worked on, and I think he will. He's got a huge arm, huge playability. There's another quarterback that we'll talk about later that is thought of as being highly touted because of his runability, because of what he adds in that regard. But now take a look at Josh Allen, who last year ran 89 times for 631 yards and 8 touchdowns. Okay, that's starting 11 games. That's probably more than Cam Newton was going to do when Cam Newton set records for that. Average of 7.4 yards per attempt, 52.6 yards per game. So you're getting 5 rushing points, 5 points just from your rushing yardage per game from Josh Allen on average. Will it necessarily stay up that high? Probably not. But but the touchdowns, certainly if they're at goal line positions, they have not improved heavily on their offense when it comes to running back. They still have LaShawn McCoy. They did sign Frank Gore, TJ Yeldon. They drafted Devin Singletary, which could be great, but that remains to be seen. As for his passing, obviously he really, at this point, can only get better with his accuracy. I think he's really going to work on it, and he has a cannon of an arm. They traded for John Brown, who is a great deep threat. Zay Jones, who showed flashes last year of being a great player. Cole Beasley, who is he's a wide receiver in the league. But he definitely has some playability when it comes to the slot. Robert Foster, Andre Roberts, they're looking to let them pound it and let him throw it. They even brought in tight ends like Tyler Kroft. Even though he is injury prone, he gets that tag, unfortunately. He's a great wide receiver. They also drafted some, with their second and third pick, offensive linemen. So they're trying to help protect. I think between the big playability, the possibility of him rushing for 10 touchdowns on top of passing for 20, and the yardage he's going to get in rushing, another great player that you can stream or draft very late and get top 15 quarterback value out of. Now, that's the great thing about the rushing, is that it gives you this solid base that okay, this guy is not going to go below 10, 12 points on a week, which is not great, but I think his ceiling is much higher than that, and he gives you a great floor. So if you're looking for a great safe player with huge upside, that'll be Josh Allen this year. And I think
I'm not.
Well, you should. Because I just gave you the reasons.
Yeah, what were you saying?
I said don't draft Josh Allen, just pick him up off of waivers.
Yeah, you can't underestimate that rushing ability, man.
I
It
can't.
was crazy last year.
So
I like the guy. I like the guy a lot.
let's move on.
Not enough to draft him.
No, I mean, it's
I will
okay.
cut you off one more time.
Let's move on to most overrated, because this is probably we should get more fiery about. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but we're going to give you 4 players that we consider very underrated, especially for where they're being drafted or how they're being considered right now. So you want to start us off?
Yes. Overrated. Your basketball ability.
Extremely.
No,
It's not
Nick
even rated.
Chubb. Quiet, you fool. As I tell you about Nicholas Chubb, running back for the Cleveland Browns. Absolute stud last year. He went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight weeks without getting more than 3 carries. Yet he ended the season 4 yards short of 1,000 yards and 10 total touchdowns. Why aren't you taking this guy in the first round? Some people have him as a first rounder. Some people have him as an early second. Right now, he's the 10th, 11th running back being taken. 2 words for you. Kareem Hunt. This guy scares me. First off, don't dig the guy off the field. On the field, extremely talented. Kareem Hunt is not walking into Cleveland week 9 and being your Duke Johnson, who has 3 carries, 2 catches for 20 yards. They brought Kareem Hunt in to lighten the load for Nick Chubb. A very good football move, a terrible fantasy move. Nick Chubb is going to have a great first 8 weeks, and if for some reason you guys already did your draft and you have him, you got to trade him within the first 5-6 weeks, because I feel like after week 8, it is going to be a 50-50 timeshare. Chubb might even get the lesser of the carries because Kareem Hunt is going to have 8 weeks to learn that offense. He's going to have fresh legs, which we saw with C.J. Anderson. Everyone thought he was about to retire. False. He comes in and puts up production like Todd Gurley was. So you can see what fresh legs does. And now you got a young Kareem Hunt who can catch the ball, dynamic runner. We all know what he did with the Chiefs. Now he's going to a very, I don't want to say similar offense, but an offense with many weapons just like in Kansas City. Nick Chubb is the running back to have the first half of the season. If I had to choose, Kareem Hunt will be the running back to own the second half of the season. If you draft them, if you have to draft Chubb, I would take Kareem Hunt, but being taken right now, Nick Chubb is around where Dalvin Cook is, where he doesn't have much competition. Marlon Mack, Leonard Fournette. He's being taken right behind Joe Mixon. I mean, where he's being taken, I would not take him because he might put you in a good position in the middle of your fantasy football season, but he's not going to help you with that playoff push. And it's going to be a constant hot and cold. He might score you 20 points. He might get you 4 points. You don't know. So that's why I think he's overrated. I think he's got the talent. Absolutely love the player. Absolutely hate the situation. Thank you, Caleb.
I totally agree. For the cost right now, it's one of those situations you'd rather somebody else deal with the unknown. And he could be really great. Everybody could regret not drafting him, but just all the signs are pointing to let him slide.
Let him slide.
My first
Let him slide.
overrated is a very comparable player to Josh Allen in Lamar Jackson. And I don't understand why he's being considered so much better than Josh Allen. He has almost the same completion percentage, only 6 touchdowns last year, 1,201 yards. And I know, just like Josh Allen, he runs a lot. 695 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns in that time. So if we're talking about just about the same player, why am I saying he's so overrated? Because of where he's ranked. All right. He's ranked, by the way, ahead of Tom Brady, Jimmy Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, Kyler Murray even. All these players that to me, have a history of being much better, maybe Jimmy Garoppolo aside, of being much better than Lamar Jackson. And suddenly Lamar Jackson, who is a terrible passer, I'm sorry, guy, if I ever meet you, you can hit me. He's a terrible passer, and yet he's being taken, in the top 15 with quarterbacks. I just don't see it. Lamar Jackson needs to me, he needs to prove it. I don't think that they improved their wide receiver core that much, even with who they got in the draft, because that's a rookie, and a rookie needs to learn the system. So going into this year, I'm completely avoiding Lamar Jackson if his price is coming that high. Another guy you can stream, absolutely, when the time comes, especially if his rushing ability keeps up. But I think this team is going to be very focused on rushing, especially taking Mark Ingram. And that's what you're going to see out of him. So I really think he's very overrated. Lamar Jackson, get the heck out of here.
Get the heck out of here. Don't let the dust smack you on the ace.
Yeah, you stupid turd.
Yeah, not a big fan of Lamar Jackson. He has a lot of potential if he could learn to throw the football. I just don't think he will. And, I know they drafted some wide receivers, but, there's nothing too exciting about the passing game in Baltimore.
Not even anything.
Not even one thing.
Oh, well, let's move on.
Okay. My other overrated. This is going to sting, Caleb.
Don't do it.
It's Mr. Juju Smith-Schuster.
When I saw that written in there, I was like, what?
Don't you think I know that, Caleb? Don't you think I know that? Look, I like the receiver. I like the guy. I like everything about him. But where he's being drafted, I don't get it. He is the 6th receiver right now being taken right in around the second round, around Odell Beckham.
He did pretty good last year.
Pretty good is not what I'm looking for in the second round.
Okay.
I'm looking for Mike Evans production. Who knows about Antonio Brown? Odell Beckham. Once you start getting around the T.Y. Hilton, Robert Woods, yeah, Juju Smith-Schuster belongs there. He does not belong in the elite right now, and the only reason I say that is because he was arguably in an offense with the number 1 receiver in the NFL last year and his rookie year. Antonio Brown was drawing double coverage or single coverage from their number 1 cornerback at all times. So Juju Smith-Schuster has never really had to face the number 1 cornerback in the secondary until this year. Now, there was one game last year when Antonio Brown quit on the Steelers in Week 17, hanging out on his mink coat on the sidelines like an idiot. Juju Smith-Schuster showed up for 5 catches for 37 yards. Now, he did have a touchdown, but still, my point is, he was being faced with the number 1 cornerback, and it's a very small sample, but he was having a hard time producing. He averaged 7 yards a catch. It's not that impressive. Now, I really hope I'm wrong. I hope he has a great year this year, but he has no track record as being the number 1 receiver, whereas people being drafted around him do. They have proven track records of facing number 1 cornerbacks, of being the number 1 threat on their offense and still producing. Juju Smith-Schuster had the luxury of taking on slot cornerbacks or number 2 cornerbacks and, of course, schooling them, but now he's got to raise his game up. And Kenny, I think so, but I need a little more certainty with my number 1 receiver.
I can understand. I guess I do disagree with you slightly. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'll make you understand.
I understand the concern when you're losing somebody like Antonio Brown and now you're the one guy everybody's looking at. I think Juju is really good. I really think he's really good. And Ben Roethlisberger is a very competitive, decent quarterback. I think he can get the ball. I trust Ben Roethlisberger more than I trust Baker Mayfield, personally. So if you're talking Ben Roethlisberger getting Juju the ball compared to Baker getting OJB, the Odell Beckham Jr. the ball, then
OJB.
I don't get letters. I don't understand
Odell
them.
Jr.
I don't know how they
Beckham.
work. I might be dyslexic. Either way. I probably have to pee as well. That's messing with my brain. But if I'm comparing, and if I'm relying on one of those quarterbacks to get somebody the ball, Ben Roethlisberger to me has way more experience getting wide receivers the ball in a position that they need. I might be very surprised, but
I get that. I've watched Roethlisberger's almost every single one of his throws, and it took years for him to get that chemistry with Antonio Brown. I think Juju Smith will have a good year this year, but I think it's his second year as the number one where he's really going to explode, especially with bringing in these wide receivers.
Yeah.
Like James Washington, Deontay Johnson they got in the third round, I think. If James Washington has a good year this year and Johnson I think next year, 2020, is the year Juju is definitely going to set the league on fire. This year, yeah, I think he goes over 1,000 yards and a couple touchdowns, but I don't think he's going to have the production as some of these other wide receivers. But
almost by default,
agree to
he has
disagree.
to. If Ben's throwing for almost 5,000 yards, it's got to go somewhere, right?
Oh,
I'm going to talk about somebody that I think is very overrated, and I've talked about him before as being overrated.
yeah, your argument.
It's Amari Cooper. Yeah, all you lovers out there. I see everybody on Instagram and Twitter saying how much they love Amari Cooper. Get out of here
you're
with
gonna get
that.
Cowboys fans all hot and bothered.
Just get out of here. Listen, when he's good, he's good. But when he's bad, he's really bad, and it happens too often. Again, he ended 2018, 75 receptions, just over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. In 9 games with Dallas, he only had 2 big games where he got all 5 of his touchdowns with them. Otherwise, he ended the season with 4 receptions, 5 receptions, and no more than 32 yards. It was the same exact inconsistent play that we had with the Oakland Raiders. Even in his best season, he only had 4 big games and a disappointing 12 games. It's the same Amari Cooper. Right now, he's still, oh my goodness, he's still, in our rankings, he's obviously not going to be this high. But right now, within the industry, he is going ahead of Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Galladay, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Julian Edelman. I'm going down this list and naming players I would take over him. Chris Godwin, G.J. Moore. To me, he is a wide receiver too, and he has that wide receiver 1 upside. He has those big weeks that can win you, but you can't figure out what weeks they are. Unless you're some sort of psychic person, that's the only way you're going to figure out Amari Cooper. Again, he can prove me wrong, but this isn't his first year. It's not like last year, all of a sudden, it's his second year in this league and he's breaking out. It's not happening. There's a lot better wide receivers with more consistent play, or more players with even bigger upside, like Chris Godwin, that you can grab instead of him. And I just hate how high this guy is being taken. So that's all I got.
Yep, dude. Hit him with some fire.
Nah, that was very mild. Very, very, very mild.
Dude, I could tell you he hurt you.
He did.
He hurt you.
I even had him for good games, and then I just sat him the rest of the season. But I've had him in years past, and I know what it's like to play him. Oh, he's great today, and tomorrow he's not. It's so sad. So, guess what I'm excited about now?
You sound like a scorned lover.
I just don't like him anyway.
Oh, okay.
It's probably his face. Like, I want to punch it.
I would say from a scale from 0 to 10, his face punchability is, I'd say it's like a 4.5. I don't think it's 5.5.
Okay, well, that's good. We're gonna also list that in our rankings, like face punchability. Just
that's the main ranking
to consider it. Hey, you know what we should do right now when it comes to rankings?
What?
We should get into our running back rankings. Finally.
We should go over them.
What's really funny is that when we were doing our first test recording for this podcast, something that never released, the very first thing we did is do a test of doing our top 10 running back rankings. And so it's just kind of funny. It's actually taken 2.5 months almost, and now we're finally getting to the actual rankings. So these will be in consensus format. Basically, we're taking the average of our two and putting them together and coming up with our rankings. We're going to tell you how we individually ranked them as well. But yeah, let's get into our running back rankings. And our number one overall consensus running back is not going to come to any surprise. It's Saquon Barkley, the New York Giants. It's hard to think of anything bad to say about this guy. The only thing that I can say is that the Giants, at least on paper right now, have one of the hardest schedules for the running back. And so if you're facing high-end defenses, last year, Saquon Barkley's, all his big games came against bottom 15 defenses. And he still turned out points against the other teams, but not nearly to the same degree as he did against those middling defenses. So that's the only detriment you can say. I still don't believe if you draft him number one that he's going to finish as a number one running back. I'm not that keen on him finishing that high. It's rare that you get a player like Todd Gurley that you draft number one and he finishes number one. What do you think? Are you mad about him being number one?
No, I think he's just going to be rock solid. I think we saw that last year. Even games where he got stuffed rushing, he's one of Eli Manning's favorite targets, and that's with Odell Beckham on the field. You take Beckham away, Manning's going to check down to him like crazy. So if you're in a PPR or half PPR, that makes him even more appealing. I don't think there's much of an argument here, especially the Giants making that trade for Odell Beckham or getting rid of Odell Beckham. They got Kevin Zeitler, I think his name is, tackle from Cleveland, who's very good. So just trying to solidify that offensive line a little more will only do wonders for Saquon Barkley. So even though he had a very impressive rookie season, I expect that to continue. And if you have the first pick, I don't think you should take more than a half a second to make it.
Yeah, and I don't know if you agree with me, but I really wouldn't blame anybody. There's like at least 3-4 running backs that if you took them number one, I would be like, yeah, okay, I'm fine with that.
Who are those three?
Well, we're going to talk about them next, aren't we?
Oh, you tease me like that, Caleb.
Well, go on to number 2. That's another one that I really wouldn't blame somebody.
Ezekiel Elliott. Again, big fan of him. Wasn't able to get him last year in any of my leagues. Wish I could. He, again, very kind of rare in today's football, but the absolute center of that running game in Dallas, center of that offense, in my opinion. He catches the ball. He runs the ball. He scores touchdowns. I mean, you saw what happened when Dallas made an effort last year to get him more involved. I know early on they didn't do it as well, but I mean, he's getting a track record now. What is this going to be, his 3rd or 4th year? I think.
Yeah, 3rd year, right?
Yeah, and I mean his first 2 years are just out of sight. So he's just what you want out of your first round pick. Consistent unless some unforeseeable injury happens. He's going to give you number one running back stats. He's not going to have any setbacks when it comes to production. He's just going to be rock solid for the majority of his career and definitely a clear-cut number one running back.
Yeah, I can, especially this year, he's really playing for his contract for next year. They just, selected his 5th-year option. So if he knows that if he plays really solid this year, he will become the highest paid running back in the league. So,
well, I mean, when it comes to NFL, you don't want to overwork your running backs, but in fantasy, you definitely want them to. He had over 300 carries last year and almost 100 targets in the passing game. He ended up with 77 receptions. So, I mean,
I mean,
it's the same argument I have for Saquon. They use him in the passing game, and when it comes to the running game, there isn't much competition for him.
yeah, I mean, we're probably talking too much about him. It's kind of obvious that these are good players, and if you're in the position to grab them, yeah.
After going over the numbers,
Now, by the
we
way,
find out he is good.
By the way, we both ranked Saquon Barkley number 1. Wes has Ezekiel Elliott number 2. I actually had him ranked number 3 because my number 2 is our consensus number 3, and that's Mr.
What?
Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, that's a confusing bunch of things. Christian McCaffrey.
My 3 is your 2, and your 2 is my 3. So let's look at our number 10.
We kind of had them swapped there. So my number 2 is Christian McCaffrey with Carolina Panthers. Our number 2 consensus. Number 3. I'm sorry. You've confused me. I'm going to leave now. I'm out. Christian McCaffrey is our consensus number 3. He is obviously a phenomenal player. Set record last year with receptions for a running back. Carolina actually has a decent schedule this year, at least again on paper. Well, their strength of schedule would definitely be right in the middle as to who they're facing for running backs. And Christian McCaffrey has been working tirelessly. Reports coming out that he's stronger than ever.
Looking like a beast.
Yeah, Did
you see him?
Yes, he's a stud.
God.
Now, he's getting stronger. He's getting faster. Again, he's going into year 3. You mentioned him, last week and on talking about how going out of the draft, they thought, they drafted him too high, blah, blah, blah. It'll be a great, should I do it? Ancillary piece. Drink, everyone.
1, 2, 3, shot.
He is so good. And I honestly, if I have the number 1 pick, I almost want to take McCaffrey because I think he's going to have such a big role on that offense. I know Cam Newton said he's going to start throwing here soon and he might come back in. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But Christian McCaffrey is just such a stable piece and an important piece in that offense in the running game and the passing game. He is an everything back just like those other two, Barkley and Elliott. And he's
anything but ancillary.
He's a really good player. Really good. So that's why he's our number 3. Who's our number 4? Or do you have any comments about him?
I was just going to say the only reason, and the more I think about it, maybe I do like him as number 2, but the only reason I like Ezekiel over him is Ezekiel has one more year of solid production. McCaffrey's rookie year wasn't all that impressive. Last year was his big coming out party. I know it's a hair, man. It's so close, but, gun to my head, yeah, I got to go with Ezekiel just for what little more of a track record he has than Christian McCaffrey. But if Christian McCaffrey ends up on my team, I am not crying and I am not pooping myself.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Alvin Kamara, number 4. Alvin! He, if you can remember, our first Devil's Advocate was my challenge.
Yeah.
And I do like Alvin Kamara. He is our number 4 consensus. He's going to get the same workload as he did last year, where they brought in Latavius Murray. So he's going to take the Mark Ingram role. So I wouldn't expect people might be thinking he's going to all of a sudden get Ezekiel Elliott or Saquon Barkley attention, 300 carries. No, he doesn't have the body for that, the build. But he is going to get you. Last year he had 18 touchdowns. I mean, in fantasy football, it's all about the touchdowns. Plus, he catches the ball, as we all know. He had 81 receptions. So I feel like he's like a step down from Christian McCaffrey when it comes to production, but still, the touchdowns are there. He's a big part of that offense. Drew Brees is always looking to check down to that guy. Yeah, he always can go for a touchdown. Yeah, I like him a lot as number 4, but I don't think he goes any higher than that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't see anybody taking him more. You actually had him ranked down at 6. A couple other players and a surprise running back that you had ranked ahead of him. And I had him at 4, but he ended up as our consensus 4. Again, another player, if he ends up on your team, you're not going to be mad about it. Yes, they have, like you said, Latavius Murray to vulture some stuff, but good player. Good player.
He's good.
He's good. Next up, Melvin Gordon, who's actually switched on ours. I had him ranked at 6, and you had him at 4. But the way the dice roll, he ended up as our consensus 5. A touchdown machine. Dealt with some injuries last year, but he's on a really good offense. And again, a lot of these players that we're talking about, if they're on a really good offense, you want a part of that offense, and you want a part of that player. If they're on a really bad offense, you just hope that they are the most talented player on that team and they're using them right. But if Melvin Gordon is healthy, yes, they have some other running backs, Austin Eckler, Josh Jackson, that can really help there and carry some weight. But Melvin Gordon can do it all. Not passing. I'm not sure if he's done that yet, but catching, running, and there's not a lot of backs that are really heavy duty, and he's a giant guy, by the way. Very strong. He's huge. He's a giant man. If he can stay healthy, I just hope this isn't the case of like a Devontae Freeman where injuries start rolling in, creeping up, and then year after year they start coming in, because he has dealt with some injuries in the past. This isn't the first season. But Melvin Gordon still, he's a stud, and we can't foresee injuries. So sitting pretty at number 5.
Yeah, big fan of Melvin Gordon. I had him last year. Yeah, it is concerning. Has 4 years in the NFL, and only 1 year did he play a full season. But I mean, if he stays healthy, it is going to pay off for you big time.
Yeah.
He played 12 games last year and had 14 touchdowns. I mean,
it's crazy.
I mean, what do you think? Of course, he's awesome. So if he were to stay healthy, and as much as Austin Eckler's there and that Jackson guy that we saw, there's no threat to his workload whatsoever. He had 50 receptions in those 12 games. A full season, he'd definitely be in the top 3 conversation. So if he could stay healthy at number 5 running back, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
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 On number 6, and I'll let you talk about him, Le'Veon Bell.
No, I'll let you talk about him because you're the reason he's so high right now.
You have Le'Veon Bell. You have him ranked at 10. I have him ranked at 5. He's our consensus 6. And
I don't know how that works.
I've explained to you how these consensus work.
I'm just kidding. I'm just messing with you.
Our consensus 6 going into the season. So why am I so much higher on him? I mean, heck, top 10 running back regardless, right? Top 10 running back. Bell is an unreal talent. Yes, offensive lines help, and you had the argument last week about, I think it was you. It might have been me. I don't remember. The difference between of what an offensive line can do. But Bell pretty much trademark the patient, slow to start running back, the one that sits behind the line and spends so much time behind the line, waiting for something to develop. But guess what? He's also probably one of the best pass catching backs in the league. He had a year off. He had plenty of rest, plenty of time to get healthy, be ready. He has time to grow with this team. I mean, they have some pieces on that team, but he will absolutely be the feature. He's going to be a great outlet for Sam Darnold, who we have yet to see him play a great full season where he doesn't have to dump it off a bunch. And who better to dump it off to than Bell? I mean, I see him easily with 80-plus catches, double-digit touchdowns. So in my mind, if you're getting him at 6, I think he's superior to the rest of the players behind him. And yeah, that's my Bell thing. I realize you're not as high on him, but I just think he's so good. And how can you not want him?
So good because he had all that time to rest and get fat.
Yeah, he's not fat anymore.
Hey, he's a fat man. 280. What do you think? No, honestly, I think he's going to be a good back. He has all the talent in the world. It's the Jets I'm not sure of.
Yeah.
Last week, obviously you ignored my argument where he was the Jets offensive line. He might not have that ability to be patient. The Steelers offensive line could hold and he could pick his opportunities to cut and slash. The Jets offensive line might not be able to hold like that. He might not be able to use his greatest strength of being patient. When he does, it's hard to keep him getting anything less than 5 yards. It's awesome. Watching him the last few years with Pittsburgh, he's one of the best running backs I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But with the Jet, I mean, you're only as good as your line sometimes. Will he get the receptions? Definitely. Sam Darnold is going to love him. And yes, I agree. 70, 80 receptions, couple touchdowns in the receiving game. The running game, I don't know. That's why if he was with the Steelers still, he's in the number 1, number 2 argument. With the Jets, I don't know. Yeah, that's why I had him a little further down than you did. But
it's a
yeah,
prove it.
I mean,
it's a prove it type situation. Prove
it's
you're good on any team.
Yeah, it's definitely the Jets I'm worried about, not Le'Veon.
Yeah. David
And
Johnson.
that's all I'll say about that.
David Johnson comes in as consensus 7. He was actually ranked as 7 for me, and he's ranked as an 8 for you. So he comes in pretty close, a lot higher than a lot of people have him ranked. A lot of people have him outside of the top 10, outside of the top 12. Why do you like David Johnson so much, bro?
Because you got to remember what this guy's all about. He had a decent year last year. He almost had 1,000 yards rushing, 50 receptions, 450 yards. Like, that's comparable to Melvin Gordon's stats. Now, Melvin Gordon did it in 12 games, not 16. But remember, this guy's coming back from an injury. He did total 10 touchdowns last year. So I think we were used to the David Johnson who had 1,200 yards rushing, 16 touchdowns. What did he have? Like 800, 900 yards receiving, 80 receptions, 4 touchdowns. Like that, 2016 was historic with what numbers he put up. So yes, he had an injury last year or the year before, and then he came back from it. And I mean, he comes back to a Josh Rosen. It was a hairy situation. Now you have Kyler Murray, a guy that's going to get that offense back and rolling. It's going to be exciting. He might not be the best quarterback, but he's going to get the ball moving. I feel like David Johnson's going to have more receptions. The defense is going to have to pay more attention to the quarterback, maybe the young receivers. I feel like he's going to surpass his numbers for sure. And those numbers weren't even bad last year. They just weren't what we're accustomed to with David Johnson.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to put up his historic numbers like he did, but I think he should be drafted higher than where people have him right now.
Yeah, top 10 for sure. I mean, I'm not mad about where he is because I would rather get a late pick and grab him in the front of the second or the back of the first, because I think he has a really high value there. But love David Johnson. James Conner coming in at our consensus 8. Kind of switched around right there because James Conner was your 9 and he was my 8. Similar, grounding to David Johnson, but James Conner proved last year that he can be what the Steelers needed without Le'Veon Bell, that they didn't need him. Again, a lot of that comes down to the fact the offensive line is so good and has been so good for so many years. And that's not going to be any different this year. They're going to be a run-heavy team. He can catch the ball really well. He did deal with a couple of minor injuries, but still, this year, going in at 8, I'm very happy if I get him at the back, towards the end of the first round as number 8 pick. I like James Conner, but your team better than anybody. Do you like James Conner?
I like James Conner a lot. And the more I think about it, I think I had him ranked too low. Right now, 15th overall, ADP 15. That's second round. I would love to get him in the second round. I was looking at last year's stats, Caleb. He missed 4 games. He missed 3 games last year, okay? 3 games. and ended up as the 6th overall running back in points last year.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's
Yeah.
dang good.
Very.
I wouldn't even call him ancillary, Caleb. I would call him awesome.
You should, just so we can drink more.
Yeah. Ancillary.
Yes.
You got the offensive line. Yes, they drafted Snell in the draft, but I mean, if I know Pittsburgh, which I do, they do not like running back by committee. This guy is going to get the ball. He's going to get it a lot. He's going to catch the ball. He had 55 receptions last year, and this is all missing 3 games. If he can stay healthy, he had 12 rushing touchdowns last year.
Yeah.
So he had 13 total. I mean, that's really good. And I think a second round running back, if you can get one that does that, you don't even think about it.
Yeah,
you do it, and you feel good about it.
They're not afraid to give him a workload because they know you have to get a momentum. And as a running back, once you get a momentum and you get a few holes, you start feeling good, and you look for those big plays, and that's what the Steelers understand. So they like a workhorse running back. Connor is that. And this next guy, by the way, I definitely have him too low. I didn't have a chance to kind of reevaluate him today once I saw how high. Dalvin Cook, you have him ranked up as your number 5 running back.
Ooh.
Currently my number 13, although he will be moving up for sure. But he lands as the consensus number 9, Dalvin Cook. That's probably the highest I've really seen him on any rankings. Number 5. So what do you see in Monsieur Cook? Yeah, that was French.
Dalvin. Listen to me, Frenchman. Dalvin Cook. I know the hype train for this guy is coming in hot, and I found my seat on it. I want to believe in this guy. I feel like he's an Alvin Kamara without competition.
That's a good way of looking at it.
He catches the ball. He's a great receiver out of the backfield. He's a shifty little guy in the backfield. There's not much competition. They drafted a running back. It's not like they signed. Latavius Murray's not there anymore, so he's not vulturing touchdowns. I like where he's at. I like that he's a big reception guy. And with Kirk Cousins getting more comfortable and spending some more time getting comfortable with Dalvin Cook because he was hurt last year, it's contingent on this guy staying healthy. Big if. But if he does, I feel like you're talking about a top 3 draft pick in 2020 once he puts up numbers this year. So,
yeah,
buy low now, boys.
He showed a lot in the end of last year. I mean, I was glad to dump him when I did early in the leagues because it took him a long time to come back. Especially when you have those hamstring issues, they nag. They nag and nag like
no
you
dang
on a
hammies.
hot sunny day. I'm tired. Yeah, I'm nagging you. No,
the sun takes it out of me.
Hamstring issues are tough. So he goes into next year healthy. The way that the offense is looking, and we are going to talk about that team today. So we'll talk about it a little bit more. But let's finish up. Let's round out the top 10, and our top 10 consensus is unfortunately a Cincinnati Bengal. Sorry, all you Bengals fans. It is Joe Mixon. And Joe Mixon, you have him ranked higher than me, actually. You have him at number 7. And I have him down at, it takes me a little longer than I wanted to get it up. Number 11.
Not the first time you said that.
So you're definitely higher on him. You got him at 7. I have him at 11, just outside that top 10, but still RB1 status. He's a really good player. He has some really, really, really good potential. I think the similar issues to what Dalvin Cook could face as injuries have kept him off the field for an entire season. But he's very good. And unfortunately, too, he's on a not-so-great Cincinnati Bengals team, which, if he's healthy, should calculate into him being used a lot and more often. And if he was healthy, and for that reason of his injury proneness, I don't see them giving him 25 carries a game or 25 touches a game. but he does a lot with the touches he gets. So if he's on the field, he's a great player. You always play him. And those are the kinds of players you want. You want a player on your team that if they're healthy, he's in your starting lineup. That's always good to know. So I like Joe Mixon, not as much as you. What do you like better than me?
Honestly, what he did last year, almost 1,200 yards rushing, 5 yards a carry, 8 touchdowns, and catching the ball almost 50 times with a touchdown. The draft made me think a lot about this guy. Jonah Williams, top tackle taken out of Alabama this year in the draft. They drafted Michael Jordan, guard out of Ohio State, just really making an effort to improve that offensive line. I feel like what Joe Mixon did with a terrible line, I think with an improved line, we only can see his stats headed in the right direction. So I didn't like this guy coming out of college for some reason, but I like him. Not as a top 5 back, but I think he'll be decent as your number 2. If he's your number 1, I wouldn't worry about it either.
Fine. If he is.
I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind him. People kind of consider him like a Le'Veon Bell light.
I'm so tired of hearing that.
Yeah. Because it's so easy as watching games to just say words and make them sound smart.
Oh, he's a Le'Veon Bell light.
Oh, all right. Well, that wraps it up for our top 10. We will continue next week with part 2 and running backs, and then we'll get into other positions later. But next week we might move it through it a little bit faster, and hopefully we'll get like our top 25 rounded out.
Top 300.
Top 300 running backs, all the way down to high school level. Let's get into a couple of team evaluations. Let's dive in to the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears.
Starting with the NFC North.
NFC North. Let's get into these teams, some of the changes to the teams, win possibilities, what's going to happen. So let's start with the Vikings then. Why don't you take us out?
I'll take us in, actually, Caleb.
Bring it in. Take us out. Take me out. Go.
Here we go. Let's roll. 6th season for Mike Zimmer as the head coach of the Vikings. Last year, 8-7-1. Big disappointment. Huge disappointment after signing Kirk Cousins to that massive deal. Losing, being a game short of the Super Bowl, expectations were high. Well, they did pretty bad. Kirk Cousins did pretty bad. But I think they had a really good draft. They drafted Garrett Bradbury, which was a huge pickup for them. That's a plus for Dalvin Cook as well. Second round, Irv Smith, who's a tight end. Kyle Rudolph has been underwhelming. He's a decent old school tight end. Irv Smith is the new school tight end, the guy that you can line up in the slot or bring him in as a blocker. They got that Alexander Madison, the guy that's going to back up Dalvin Cook. And then they got another offensive lineman, Drew Samia. He protected Kyler Murray. So, I mean, they drafted really well. They really attacked that offensive line, which they needed to. They got an offensive weapon. And they have the backup for Dalvin Cook. In free agency, they also went and got Josh Klein. 3 years, $15 million. Pretty good guard. So, again, they're really looking at that offensive line, which needed help so bad. Dan Bailey, re-signed. Very good kicker. Not going to spend more than 10 seconds talking about a kicker in fantasy football, but he's a guy.
You've already spent enough time.
Good. Yeah. And since this is not so much fantasy involved, it is important to bring up that Anthony Barr mucked around with the Jets, flirted a little bit, and then came home to the Vikings. That was huge for their defense. My concern is their wide receiver depth, though, man. Like, Adam Thielen?
Treadwell's their number 3. What are you talking about? You don't like...
Good point. Thanks for proving it for me.
Yeah, that gets to be a little bit of an issue. I mean, I do like the way the coaching staff is being formed. Gary Kubiak in there, as you mentioned. And yeah, if you're looking at their running backs, You have Dalvin Cook, Amir Abdullah is maybe their second. They have a couple of other guys, but for the most part, you know, their depth chart is not super stacked, but there are really good players at the position. Kirk Cousins
Yeah.
is a more than serviceable quarterback that if you need to play him, he's going to put up points most of the time. Obviously, you know how much you love Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, and something their offensive coordinator that they have on was a tight end coach for 3 years. And that might be why they drafted this Irv Smith guy. Kyle Rudolph is still there in his 9th season, and he can be a good tight end. So there's value at pretty much every single position here in my mind. So for fantasy-wise, I think the team as a whole will be a good team. Now, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, now they're predicted, their over-under on wins, or their win prediction is at 9 right now. Where do you see that going? You think that's spot on?
They got the 9th toughest. Thank you.
Sorry?
They have the 9th toughest schedule. Oh, this one is a hard one because they nailed it. Because I do see them going around 9-7. If I had to guess, man, I hate to say it, I think they're under 8-8 maybe. Kirk Cousins just does not inspire any confidence in me with that team. So I would say a hard under.
Yeah. I am fine with the 9 because I don't have a ton of confidence in the other teams in their division. There's definitely talent there, but I think there's a lot of changes being made across that division. And this is one of the teams that really everything's the same pretty much, positionally at least. So I'm fine with 9 wins personally.
You got to go over or under.
Oh, I'll take the over on it. Yeah, I'll take the over for the Vikings this
Just
year.
to be contrary.
Oh, I would never do that with you.
So I don't know if you did this, Caleb, but every time we do one of these teams, I'm going to have an avoid and a guy to keep your eye on or buy, however you want to say it.
Go for it.
The guy to avoid, which you might have avoided him anyway before the draft, Kyle Rudolph, he used to have some sort of fantasy relevance. The drafting of Irv Smith totally makes him irrelevant to me in fantasy anymore.
Yeah.
He was touchdown dependent. Now you have Irv Smith who will take over. So I don't see why you'd ever draft him, why you'd ever pick him up.
He's the number 17 tight end right now. That's probably appropriate.
I think it's extremely inappropriate.
Yeah.
I think that's way too high. And this guy, it almost gets me mad. The guy that to keep an eye on or buy or whatever you want to call it, Adam Thielen. He is the 13th ranked receiver right now. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Does no one remember? He started the season last year with 8 straight 100-yard games. Like, people are talking how historic that is. Like, it was a crazy start to the season. And yes, he cooled off near the end of the year, but he still ended the season with 113 receptions, 1,300, almost 1,400 yards receiving, and 9 touchdowns. Like, this guy is awesome.
He's pretty good.
13th overall receiver?
Yeah.
That's Antonio Brown numbers that he put up.
It's honestly odd that Stephon Diggs is being still ranked ahead of him, just like he was last year. Like, I'm way more Adam Thielen bound than Stephon Diggs.
I don't know what else he's got to prove, what else he's got to do statistically, man. Like,
they just signed him to a huge contract.
Yeah, but if he drops in your league, lick those chops and pick him up.
Absolutely. Huge value there. Huge.
Okay, let's move on to our next team, the Chicago Bears. Do you want to take it away?
Oh, man, I can talk a little bit about it. Let me talk about the coaching staff in there. Matt Nagy, his first season with the Chicago Bears, you might say that it wasn't a success. Unfortunately, they lost in the playoffs, but he got them there. He turned a quarterback, Mitch Trubisky, who pretty much everybody viewed as was going to be a flop, into somehow being a serviceable quarterback with some very studly games. I'm still not very high on Mitch Trubisky. have no intentions of having him on my team in any way, shape, or form, which is maybe a little bit mean. But to me, he's not a phenomenal quarterback. They do have some talent at running back, talent at wide receiver. They have some talent across the board. So there are players that you can pick up. They're projected their win total at 9 as well. And I think it's going to rely on their defense. Just like it did last year. If they can have the same defense that they had last year, I'll take the over on that, of course. But if the defense is any worse and they have to rely on Mitch Trubisky every single game, I just don't see it happening. And I don't see them getting to the 9 wins, and I think they'll take a step back. That's just me.
Ooh, Caleb. Some hot takes coming out.
No hot take.
I like the Chicago Bears this year, actually. That heartbreaker against the Eagles. Do you hear like they're bringing in kickers to try and kick that exact same kick that Cody Parker missed?
they're never going to live it down.
It's terrible. Like, I think that's a terrible coaching move by Matt Nagy. Like, all the players are coming in. They want to start fresh. Oh, by the way, let's do this kick just so you remember how your season ended terribly. The draft. They still have Khalil Mack, 12.5 sacks last year, a pick and a touchdown. Awesome. Basically their first-round pick. He's still going to be the anchor of that defense. A very young, athletic, fast defense that I expect to be great again.
I know who you're going to mention.
That's right.
Danny DeVito.
David Montgomery.
Oh, yeah.
David Montgomery, man. They jumped 14 spots in the third round for him. They're not doing that to bench the guy. He had 1,000 yards his last 2 years with Iowa State. I like this guy a lot. Riley Ridley, the receiver they got, he's going to make an instant impact, I believe. He moved to free agency. They got Mike Davis, Cordell Patterson for the return game. Clinton Dix only going to solidify that secondary. I will say this. 9 games, over, under. I'm taking the over. I'm taking the over all day long, Caleb. I'm taking that over.
Take it.
It's took.
Again, if that defense is the same, I'll take the over. And
you can't be playing this politically correct answer.
I'm not. You're politically correct in your face hole. No,
if they win 10 games, then I could see them winning over 9.
I just don't see Mitchell Trubisky. I just don't. For some reason, I don't have confidence in him as a quarterback to win
then
games.
Guess what?
If you put it on his back, what? Chicken butt.
The guy I'm going to avoid is Allen Robinson in fantasy, health-wise, and just I think he's kind of overrated, especially with some of the new weapons they're bringing in there.
Yeah.
I don't, and he's aging, man. I think he's older than some people think.
Even Anthony Miller, who they brought in last year, who they drafted last year, he's really good.
Yeah, Allen Robinson. Oh shoot, I feel like an idiot. He's pretty young, actually.
He's 26.
Yeah. Still, I don't know why.
It seems like he's been around so long.
Yeah, but anyway, I with where he's going. I feel like you had to defend him in Devil's Advocate, and you had a hard time doing it just from where he's being taken.
That's it. Just really where he is,
Yeah, I
right now he's
to buy.
Ranked as wide receiver 19 ahead of Julian Edelman, Chris Godwin, DJ Moore, Landry, Lockett, Calvin Ridley. I don't know. Maybe it's appropriate.
Maybe it's not.
Maybe it's not.
Trey and the
Burton,
guy, the guy I would like to buy this year in the Bears offense is none other than, do you want to say it or do you want me to say it?
Tariq Cohen?
Mitchell Trubisky.
Oh, man. I don't want him at all. Get that out of here.
I think just how hot you've been on quarterbacks today, Caleb. I don't believe that you overlooked Mitchell Trubisky. He is the 15th overall quarterback. Right around your buddy Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott. He had a pretty good year last year, 3,300 yards, and he was 2 games short of a full season. So he very well could have, pushed for 3,700 yards or something in just his second year, 24 touchdowns, and he runs the ball. He almost had 500 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. I think Matt Nagy's system is just going to help him improve more and more. It doesn't ask too much of him. And I think with his running ability, I think he's kind of being underrated right now. So
I think it's the
shoot
face
me,
punch
Caleb.
ability. I think he has a high-end face punch ability. So
I will say his face punch ability is in the upper eights.
Yeah.
It is punchable.
that's where it is. I guess just watching him play, because I got to see a few games and play on like a Thanksgiving Day. That one in particular sticks out in my mind, and he just, the way he moves, his body language, I just don't love it. But whatever. I don't want him. Maybe it'll change my mind. Maybe you'll change my mind. Definitely looking at the depth chart. Again, there is some talent there if Trey Burton's healthy. So there's still some nice value in on the team. So again, a good team with a good offense that if you can get shares of the offense, take it.
Breaking news, Caleb. His face punch ability went up to a 9. I didn't realize he grew a beard, and he is definitely a guy that shouldn't be growing a beard.
Okay. I'm just happy you took the time to Google a picture of Mitch Trubisky. So
Well, like, I knew how punchable his face was, but I'm like, I need to see it again. And then he has this beard where it's like, come on, man. Like, what is this?
Can you, as the listeners,
grow a
tell that
beard.
we are very secure in our
He looks
manhood?
Amish.
All right, hey, that's it. Let's wrap it up.
For God's sake, let's wrap this up.
Got some rankings done. We covered a couple
Fun.
of teams. We did some overrated and underrated. Next week, 2 more teams. We're going to round out the NFC North. We're going to take on the Packers and the Lions. We're going to get into finish, hopefully, top 25 in our running back rankings. Talk about any news, if anything does come out. And really just establish our dominance over these punchable faces. And I think we're going to have a quarterback that has a really punchable face next week. So,
Ooh. Let's see if he breaks the perfect 10 with the punchable face.
I didn't know it was possible. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Again,
We got to come up with something, Caleb, with the over and unders. Whoever wins, they got to get something or something like that. Because I feel like we already went opposites. I had under
Yeah.
on the Vikings. So we'll have to come up with some stakes.
well, I'm going to have it written down, so we'll figure it out. Maybe we'll do like a slap bet. Maybe we'll have the slappable faces. For each one that we're wrong
Yes.
on, we take a slap to the face.
Sounds painful.
And
I
we'll
like it.
probably be unrelenting in our, retaliation.
It wouldn't be the first time we got in a slap fight, Caleb. Won't be the last.
All right. Again, thank you. Thank you for joining. I am Caleb. This is my partner in crime, the sexy Rexy, Mr. Westbore.
Oh, behave yourself, Caleb.
Yeah, I will. You know where to find
you
us.
Life in AFFW. That's our name. Look for it.
At Life in AFFW on Twitter and Instagram. Follow us, send us some questions, and I think that's all we got. Do you want to play us out?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Hit it, Caleb. Thanks for joining us. Taking an hour and listening to us bicker and yell at each other and just be a couple of a-holes.
Self-censored.
Indeed.